The screams. When someone screams, it could be out of fear, it could be out of pain. When the poet personifies the screaming, it tells you that it is consistent, it is persistent, and it is inhumane and man-made. The poem is about pain and its negative consequences on those who are treated like subhuman beings. The speaker is likely to be a black man, and he addresses the viciousness of the white man. He indicts the evil perpetrated on defenseless people by the evil apartheid regime in South Africa. The speaker brings the screams of the men who scream at their victims without mercy. They are referred to as madmen. There are screams over the graveyard about skeletons piled in heaps with disjointed bones. He also points out the voices of vultures that fly above the corpses that have been abandoned on the hills with eyes plucked away from their sockets. The corpses are abandoned in the wilderness and without even having the courtesy to give the dead a befitting burial. He also presents torn clothes in the middle of an abandoned field, probably of a nursing mother who had been molested and separated from her child, shot and abandoned in the field. Rhetorically, he asks the speaker who must have worn the dress, or to whom does the dress belong to. Finally, the speaker presents those who have lost loved ones and how they wish in their dreams that they may return. He also concludes that it seems fruitless because the people are already dead. The poet wants the reader to expose the plight of the suffering of blacks to the whole world, so that the inhumanity and barbarity of the South African apartheid government can be known to the world. This is a poem that focuses about man's inhumanity to man and racial segregation. The white South African regime has no respect for human dignity, and it is very oppressive. Through the images of horror and terror, Kunene succeeds to expose the savagery of the apartheid system in South Africa. The blacks suffer from violence inflicted on them by the whites with no conscience. They subject the blacks to untold suffering and misery. The people scream over the graves of their loved ones who have been killed. The skeletons in piles indicate the countless number of massacres and assassinations committed by the whites on black people. The littering of corpses in the field is the height of man's wickedness, especially as the oppressor does not even think of having the decency to bury their victims. The dead are deprived of their dignity as human beings, even in death. The pathos in the poem is captured through the horror of extermination, genocide, and ethnic cleansing. The piles of the dead is a reminder of those still alive of what awaits them if they fall victims to their oppressor. This is done deliberately to instill fear and terror in the minds of the blacks and those who are still alive. Pathetically, no one is spared, not even breastfeeding mothers. The blacks are already used to summary execution, including children and babies. This barbaric action is a fruit of racism, hate, and superiority complex from the whites. Many children are left as orphans, women become widows, men become widowers, and many are taken away to prisons all over the country. Death stares at the survivors in the face, and the speaker wants the world to know about the story of these people. The poet uses the poem to emphasize that the wickedness of whites against black is persistent and consistent. He uses the poem to expose the horrors of the apartheid regime and other human rights abuses to the globe. The structure of the poem is very coherent as the speaker moves from one horror to another, arousing the reader's pity for such barbarism. The speaker seeks international sympathy for the blacks and international condemnation for the inhumanity manifested by the apartheid regime. The torn dresses belong to a woman, and this is an indication that the women were raped before being killed by their oppressors. What a shame for human beings to behave in this barbaric manner to fellow human beings. This is a poem that indicates how human beings have lost the touch, the feeling that makes them human, and how to relate with one another because of greed and because of hatred, enmity caused by racial prejudices.